won't say anything until they talk.
As a parent. It's a small sacrifice to make it. Your son's name? Bob wants to retire.
Could you pass first, please? Milk back just a slight bit so we can begin.
Very quickly.
Welcome to this press conference for the Grateful Dead and its three organizations with whom we are presenting the Rainforest benefit at Madison Square Garden the 24th of this month. I'd like to repeat there is a considerable quantity of press releases, also videotape for those of you from the visual media back there. Any other requests, please speak with me or Herb Gunther after the press conference. What we're going to do is I'm going to introduce the people at this table, ending with Dr. Noel Brown of the United Nations Environment Program, who will welcome the band. Everyone at the table is going to be making a very short opening statement, and we will then throw the floor open to questions and answers for about half an hour. So, on my far right, Mr. Peter Behoof, Chairman of Greenpeace. Next to him, Mr. Jason Clay from Cultural Survival, the group which works with indigenous peoples in these affected areas. Mr. Randy Hayes of San Francisco, the Rainforest Action Network. Mr. Jerry Garcia, Mr. Bob Weir, Mr. Mickey Hart of the Grateful Dead. Our host, our sponsor, and the man that has made this it's very special to be a rock and roll band and come to the United Nations. And we thank him, Dr. Noel Brown, of the head of the United Nations Environment Program.
Thank you, Dennis. I'll just add my own words of welcome on behalf of the United Nations Environment Program and on behalf of the United Nations generally to the band and to the media for joining us in this very special event this afternoon. We are very excited about the fact that the disappearing rainforests of the world is now beginning to take hold. For years, several agencies of the United Nations family, the Food and Agricultural Organization, the World Bank, the United Nations Development Program, have all attempted to address this problem with energy and urgency. But somehow, public understanding, the political will, and general support have not seemed to have kept pace. Unfortunately, time is running out. The data is well known. The tropical forests are being lost at the rate of 11 million hectares a year, or 50 acres a minute, a problem that not only threatens genetic diversity, but human survival in these rainforests. Moreover, the problem is likely to be compounded by the fact that by the year 2000, there'll be a fuel wood deficit of some 900 million cubic meters. As a result of that, people are likely to put greater pressure on the forest. Then there is a growing recognition of the problem of global warming. The fact that the forests are natural sinks, and if we destroy them, then we will lose one of the principal laboratories for the transformation of CO2 into oxygen. This is very, very worrying to my own program. There is a tropical forest action plan which involves government and non-governmental organizations, including my colleague Chuck Lancaster from the United Nations Development Program, who is very, very central to that plan. But we need to rally and mobilize public support. We need all sectors of society to become involved. And that is why this initiative of the Grateful Dead, to place their art in the service of the environment, in the service of the rainforest, and ultimately in the service of life, is so important to us at the United Nations. We welcome them, and we look forward to working with them in the future. Congratulations, gentlemen, and thank you very much.
You want to start just at one end or the other with the brief statements?
Yeah, sure, I'll start. We just want to announce what we're doing. And the thing that makes it newsworthy from our point of view is that we've never really called on our fans, the deadheads that you people probably know about, to align themselves one way or another as far as any particular cause is concerned, because of a basic paranoia about leading somewhere where when we don't want to be the leaders and we don't want to serve unconscious fascism. You know what I mean? It's like power is a scary thing. When you feel that you're close to it, you feel like you want to make sure that it isn't used for misleading. So all this time we've avoided making any statements about politics, about alignments of any sort. This is even true of the notion of giving and things like that, mercy, you know. But this is, we feel, is an issue that is strong enough and life-threatening enough that inside of the world of human games, where people regularly torture each other and overthrow countries, and there's a lot of murder and hate, there's the larger question of global survival and everything else. I think we want to see the world survive to play those games, even if they're atrocious. So the sense of this is, let's take a break in the stuff that we normally do and address the Earth's survival, and hopefully we'll include our own in there. That's pretty much it. The reason that we've gotten involved with Greenpeace and Randy and Jason is because these are direct action groups. They work the way we do. They work directly into the problem with as little bureaucratic, as few levels of bureaucratic stuff between them and the thing that they're trying to accomplish. We hope that we can empower our own audience with a sense of being able to do something directly and actually having an effect that's visible in some way. We hope to continue this as an ongoing process and to be able to report regularly what is happening, what we've done, and whether or not any of this stuff has been efficacious. That's essentially what it's about. Guys?
I'll follow that by saying that we're here to announce our awareness of the problem and to address it as best we can. We're just learning at this point. We're learning from our colleagues over here, from various other sources. But this much we know, that it's not really an aesthetic issue. It's more an issue of survival that we're facing here. The rainforests, though not responsible for all the oxygen or on the planet, are responsible for a great deal of it. They're not responsible for the entire ozone layer, to our knowledge, but a great deal of it. Once again, it's a problem we can and must address if we're to have a planet that's capable of supporting life. We have to address all the issues, the economic issues that cause the destruction of rainforests, or they're going to go away, and other things are going to go away as well, including probably life on this planet. So in order to give ourselves a chance to work out the other problems, we have to see we have to have a future in which to work things out.
I just like to reiterate what Bob said. This is a whole Earth problem. This is not just our problem. I mean, this is the world's problem, and the world should take care of itself. Half of the indigenous species on this planet are located in the rainforests. It would be a foolish chance to take, and especially for your children. I mean, we can just do so much in our lifetime, but what about the kids? And that's what this is all about, and I think that's one of the reasons that we think that we could do something that would matter. And with our music and with your help, we can move a little air. That's basically what we're in it for.
At the Rainforest Action Network, we've been working for about 2 years to organize a grassroots activist network to sound the alarm on this rainforest crisis. We do that through education, we do it through demonstrations, banner hanging, civil disobedience. We're prepared to get arrested, and we're prepared to put our life on the line if that's what it takes to get the job done. We work with a worldwide network of activists. In the industrial north, we're working with people in Japan, Europe, and here in the United States. In the tropics, we're working with people in the Amazon, in Africa, in Southeast Asia. Our priority is simply to speak the truth about this problem and the nature of the true roots of the causes. And there's one thing we need to be clear about, and that's that the rainforest destroyers are not simply the overpopulating third worlders. The destruction starts here at home with our overconsumption of tropical hardwoods, teaks and mahoganies, rainforest beef for our fast food hamburgers. Our tax dollars through foreign aid, through USAID and the World Bank, have financed some of the most destructive highways and massive dams and resettlement projects. We have to ask the question, who builds the bulldozers and whose hand is really on the chainsaw? It's you and I, but it's also Chase Manhattan, it's Citicorp, it's Bank of America, it's the US government, and it's the World Bank. The problem starts here at home, and the philosophy of the Rainforest Action Network is physician heal thyself. We've got a lot of work to do here in the United States to save the rainforest. Rainforest destruction is a life and death issue. When I was in Malaysia, they asked for help at fighting the timber industry from destroying their forests and destroying their lives. When I was in Brazil, the Amazonian leaders asked for help at stopping US tax dollars from financing projects that destroy the forests and destroy their lives. We're here today to appeal to people who share our concern, who share our outrage, and who share our desire to reverse these patterns of destruction. The overconsumption, the industrial system of the planet is challenging this planet's life support systems. And it's not just the rainforest life, but it's our lives. The truth is, you are all going to die if the rainforest dies. The truth is that our foreign aid investment and the capital is a form of false generosity that's coming back to haunt us through the greenhouse effect and the destruction of rainforest diversity. I believe that if we are silent, then we're guilty of crimes against the earth. I also believe that if we act now, we're going to be able to save the rainforest. We're really the last generation that's going to have a chance to save the rainforest. Projections are that by the year 2050, they'll be gone. That's less than one person's lifespan. I'm really thankful to the Grateful Dead for helping us bring this message out to millions of more people who haven't yet heard it.
Tribal people are the traditional inhabitants of the world's most fragile land areas, tropical rainforest. They've lived in these areas for hundreds, if not thousands of years. They know how to use the rainforest and yet sustain them. They've been called the once and future resource managers. Today, forest-dwelling tribal people are disappearing even faster than the forests themselves. One group per year in Brazil since 1900 has been lost entirely. But we're not talking about history today. We're talking about the present, too. In the last 6 months in Brazil, 50,000 gold miners have rushed into one area where 10,000 tribal people live. As a result of the violence that has taken place, more than one Indian per day has died from direct shootings, killings of some sort, and probably 4 or 5 times that many have died from diseases each day. Tribal people know more about rainforests than all Western scientists put together. We must work together with them to sustain the rainforest and to determine how we might use them without letting them be destroyed. Our own future probably lies in the rainforest, not just their survival, but learning how to use what they have to offer us. Tribal people are the key.
I brought some photos that I want to share with people a little later, but before I get into that, I want to stress how happy I am and how thankful I am for the fact that the Grateful Dead have been involved in this project. And I really want to say to everyone how important their approach to this whole project has been. The project probably started about a year ago, mostly with Randy and some of the members of the band, and then Jason and I came in a bit later. But I want to stress that the band has been very conscientious about their approach to this project and to this problem, in the sense that they have not tried to simplify the problem, they have not tried to Madison Avenue it, they've not tried to speak on the issues when they felt that they weren't competent enough scientifically or with their background to speak to the issue. They've tried to bring in 3 different groups, and I personally appreciate that because the 3 of us have gotten so much work done just up to this point in this project. So my thanks to the Grateful Dead. We really appreciate it. The money is going to be put to a good cause, and we hope that this event continues for years and years until we resolve the problem. I'm also... Oh, sorry. No?
That's the introduction.
2 seconds. I'm very happy they picked the rainforest because it touches on so many different concerns. A few square miles of rainforest contain as much species diversity as the entire United States. I'm happy because it touches on the concern of weather in the greenhouse. It's important because it touches on cultural and indigenous people issues, and because it touches on the basic concept of sharing of information. We all know that the rainforest is important to all of us. And one of the problems we're facing right now is some of the unilateral and bilateral developmental banks right now do not share information on their projects. And that's a very important key to it as well. Thank you.
For about the next half hour, we'll take questions and answers, and by courtesy, please.
Yes, I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Joint Correspondents Association. This press conference will last another 20 minutes. First question, the money that's going to be raised, how will that be used? Will that go to the UN Environmental Program or divided between the groups? And will it go for information programs, or, you know, give us some idea of...
I think each group can answer that best. With cultural survival, which will receive 25% of the funds, the net funds raised at the concert, we'll spend about half of that sum on resource projects with indigenous peoples, projects that they design and they run themselves, projects that help these groups who live in rainforests around the world sustain those rainforests, yet earn the kinds of cash that they need in the modern world. The rest of the funds will be spent on research on crisis and chronic problems in rainforests as they affect tribal people, and on public information campaigns and allowing indigenous groups to travel back and forth and see what some of the success stories are that other groups are experimenting with.
Specifically, Greenpeace is working on the export of pesticides to third world countries and the export of other toxics. We also have a multilateral developmental bank project which is looking at some of the most heinous projects being funded by the unilateral banks and trying to force scoping sessions or informational sessions to try to be able to get people involved in the process of deciding which projects get funded or which projects, more importantly, should not get funded.
The proceeds of the concert will be divided into 4 parts, of course, with each of the 3 groups getting one of those 4 parts. The 4th part will be for the band to finance future events, and that's how the monies in general will be used. For the Rainforest Action Network, we will use the money to launch a U.S. tropical timber campaign. and also to build a grassroots network here in the United States of rainforest action groups all over the country.
Just to add that none of the funds will come to the United Nations Environment Programme or any other part of the UN system. We are, after all, an intergovernmental organization. We have now targeted some $8 billion for 55 countries under the Tropical Forest Action Plan. But we welcome the fact that the non-governmental community can mobilize resources for direct action. And anything that the United Nations can do to support this, we will do it.
I wonder in the literature out there, do you all have outlined some of the programs that we're actually going to be funding? Or is that information in print yet?
I don't believe it's in the press packet.
We can make that available to anybody who wants it.
Some of that, I guess we could ask directly. I don't know how much time we have here. Insofar as this is going to be an ongoing effort on our behalf, and probably what we hope to do is attract a great deal of support throughout the artistic community. Insofar as we're going to be ongoing in this effort, we will be able to publish as the years go by our successes or failures, where the money has gone, and specifically how the issue has been addressed. So you'll be able to see what our progress is.
I'd like to ask Jerry, what concrete steps you would suggest to right-minded, like-minded people who want to help the rainforests? Should they withhold tax dollars that go to these vicious projects which you've described? Should they boycott teak wood?
Yeah, all of the above. The thing that we discovered going into this is, yeah, sure, we'd love to do anything we can to help the rainforest. Oh, yeah, you know, with all the best intentions, blundering into a situation which turns out to be incredibly complex, with all sorts of levels of, you know, the kind of where somebody's paying to clear ground in order to grow illegal drugs and some, you know what I mean? It's just, it goes on and on. It never ends. The levels of convoluted weirdness about the whole rainforest thing. It has to do with money, of course. That's what it was really about. And so these things, what they have to do, what you have to do, if you care about this, is what we had to do. You have to start to plunge into all this information and find out what you can. The more you can know about it, the more you can find some way to be actively involved and have some effect. Otherwise, it's not so much. I don't think it's simply a matter of throwing money at it. It isn't that kind of thing, you know. It isn't so direct. It's tricky. This stuff is.
There are lists of things that you can do out there. I mean, we could read down the list, but it's long.
A first step is to find out stuff. You know, that's where I'd start.
Make yourself aware of the problem.
I'm wondering what type of follow-up activity the Grateful Dead will be involved with other than concerts. Will it just be concerts to raise funds? Or what
Well,
else?
that's what we can do. You know, we are, you know,
We can attract attention and raise money.
we can continue to point a finger at this problem. And as things be more clear, or things start to happen that look like they're changing the trend, we can talk about those, try to reinforce them. This is, it's a learning process, and like any process, you have to start somewhere. So we're starting, here's what we can do. We can play a concert, we can raise some money, we can work with these groups here. That much we found out by just putting in the time and the energy and doing it. And it's taken about a year to put this together, although it really, you know, it's not that hard for the Grateful Dead to sell out a show in New York City. You know, so it isn't just that, it's all the backup. Because we want to know that this is going to work out right. You know, we want to follow up on it. We want to see what happened to the money, what all these things are, and whether this is going to actually do anything, or is this the right way to proceed, or what? We're finding out. That's what this is, the first step in an effort to find out whether this can work.
We are committed in the long run.
Will the Grateful Dead urge other rock stars, like he's already involved in saving the rainforest? Will you urge other rock and roll people to band together with you to
Yes.
take up the cause of the
Yeah.
rainforest?
Any kind of people, you know.
We haven't had a lot of time to contact them yet.
We have Bruce Hornsby and Suzanne Vega are playing with us on this show, so there's a certain amount of support there. But there are other people too that I mean, as we started rolling, there are other people who've expressed interest.
Randy, earlier this summer, Sting joined forces with the World Wildlife Fund in a similar
Yeah.
project. assuming that the World Wildlife Fund is not part of the Rainforest Action Network, don't you run the risk of diluting the ability of celebrities and artists to bring attention
Well,
to
this is one of, like all other causes, there are several ways of going about this. Now, what's comfortable for one group of people may not be comfortable for others. We've chosen these groups because we like that direct action thing. That's like what we do at home. We have a foundation of our own that does things at home, but they're very direct. They're right aimed at the street. We don't like a lot of stuff between us and the work, you know.
In our ongoing efforts, if we find that it's possible to coordinate more groups together, we'll doubtless try to do that.
Yeah, if we can, yeah, the more people we can pull into it, who can work comfortably with each other.
Otherwise, their work should be done anyway.
What about the lyrics of your songs? I believe Throwing Stones. Are you going to start, is the content of your
never
work
should have
going
written that
to reflect?
What's the question again?
Our one political song, see?
It's not political, it's apolitical.
What about the lyrics of your songs? What about the lyrics of your songs
He's got one now that's much more offensive.
But there's a song called Throwing Stones, which apparently has, does that have anything to do with your environmental consciousness, or?
Maybe.
Not really, no, that's just barely articulated rage at the way things are going in general.
Right. This is just the beginning of our series of gripes, you know.
We've written nothing new to address a specific issue. That's not really the way we'd want to do it. We're actually addressing this issue in specific, concrete terms rather than throwing poetry
What we
at it.
do
may
for a
try
living
that.
is provide a way out of all this stuff, you know. What we do for a living is provide an alternative, another reality that doesn't have these kind of problems in it necessarily. But as people, as inhabitants of Earth, this is something. This is what we're doing as inhabitants of Earth, not necessarily as members of the Grateful Dead.
Why don't you talk about why now? Why did you now decide to do this? What motivated you personally?
It's taken this long to decide.
It's taken this long to become aware of the problem and the fact that we personally are threatened, and you too.
Yeah, yeah.
But was it?
Bob.
I've been sort of.
He found it on his doorstep.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how I got attracted to it, but I ran into Peter and Randy at a gathering, and Mickey was also there. I've been concerned with environmental issues for a long time, but it just sort of fell together all in one neat little package, and also the overwhelming concern that with which we're dealing became sort of real clear and apparent to me kind of suddenly about a year ago.
Have you visited any rainforests?
Yeah, but
only the easy ones.
Right. You don't have to actually. Not a lot of people who are going to be affected by the rainforest are ever going to have a chance to visit it. Nonetheless, you are affected by it.
It's the appalling statistics that get you finally. You know. Oh God, you know. Yeah, okay, it's in 50 years they're gone. That's it. You know. Boom.
Just to think that the rainforest is far away is not what you should be thinking. The rainforest is right at your door. I mean, the effect of it. So.
The weather is here. The air shape is here.
Yeah. We're living it out already. This stuff is already happening. So you know, it's. I mean,
it's a hard thing to address when it's 3,000, 5,000
somebody has to do something.
Away,
it seems incredibly. In fact, it seems pathetic that it has to be us. To do, you know. I mean, you know.
Yeah, we're not paid to do this, you know.
This is not our regular work, you know what I mean?
It's not my field.
It's not my field, yeah.
It is now.
That thing said 100 acres a minute, and they seem to have been dated from 1986. Are there any
newer statistics?
If there are newer statistics, we probably don't want to know them.
Yeah, right.
20 football fields a minute.
20 football fields a minute. That's graphic.
U.S. citizens also need to be aware that the United States has tropical rainforest. It's not just a distant problem.
Yeah.
We have rainforests in Hawaii, in Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, and our trust territories in the Pacific. So it's a problem we need to directly address. But Peter Bayouth has some maps of the rainforest in Brazil that might show you what's going on.
Should we wade into this?
Sure. Let me just add a footnote to that in terms of how America's interests and the world's interests are affected. One takes the Panama Canal. It requires 55 million gallons of fresh water per ship for the canal to operate successfully. That water is generated by a watershed outside the zone nourished by rainforests. Those forests are threatened.
unless we can protect them, then the canal is in very, very serious danger.
Incredible.
And we can't use the salt water from the Pacific because why not bring the salt water in? This will create some ecological disturbances that would only compound the problem. So very vital interests are at stake here, not to mention the fact that the rainforests are indeed the lungs of the world. It's an urgent matter, and it involves all of us.
Outside of actually presenting the show and associating yourself with this, how can you guys like make your fans aware of the complexities of this problem?
By passing along what we find out, and by doing stuff like this. This is the try. We're going to see what happens. You know, if whatever the result is, whatever this
more than doing nothing.
yeah, whatever this accomplishes is information which we can then say, okay, look, you guys, you know, everybody that came to this show, everybody that bought a ticket, has helped us accomplish this.
For instance, when they come through the door, they're going to get information handed to them, and we're not going to preach it to them from on stage, but nonetheless, they'll be made privy to all the information that we can
we know
gather and present to them.
Are you guys considering putting any kind of information on the next record, like for information right to?
We may include that as ongoing stuff. You know, that'll be on everything. Well, maybe if you're really nice.
Going to bring this in? You've talked about it as a group, but I know, Mr. Hart, you're doing something at the Open Center. Is this something that you're going to do individually also, or just keep it within the
Well, we have to
Grateful Dead?
attack it both as a group and individually.
Right.
I had a very interesting conversation with my son, who'll be 6, a couple of weeks ago, and he likes Wendy's hamburgers, and we know that the rainforest is being cleared to grow beef, and he's a reasonable sort. And I told him that, you know, all of these animals are in this forest and are going to be destroyed and this and that, and what do you think about that? You know, I mean, would you give up a Wendy's hamburger for that? And he was, I was really moved. He said, no, Dad, I would give up that burger. He said, I wouldn't want that burger. I would rather see all those little creatures, you know, roaming around, and I'm really concerned about that, you know, and he was concerned about that. So I think that we could reach the little guys, too. I don't think it's just our concern as a group, but if the little guys could get it, it's their world, it's their future, and if they should have a chance to make it or break it as well. And
right, exactly.
So it's everybody's problem, individually and collectively.
Randy Hayes, is it true that there are some, in the rainforest, there are unrecorded species of life that are being wiped out and destroyed?
If you helicoptered down into the middle of the Amazon and you just hiked around for a half a day, you would come across a species that had never been discovered or named by scientists, and you could name it after yourself and be forever immortalized. We know so little about the tropical rainforest. We probably know more about the moon than we know about tropical rainforests. Most of the scientific research in the rainforest over the last 2 decades has been done at the forest floor level, and yet most of the ecological activity happens up in the canopy. Only until recently, when they're using mountain climbing techniques and ropes and equipment, have they been able to string themselves up into the canopy and begin to study it. We know very little about the rainforest. There's a lot to be discovered.
No, I just add to that the data we have is that about 3% of all the species in the forest have been documented, and it would take 25,000 professional lifetimes of the scientists that are available today to give us a picture of what we're destroying, 1 an hour.
Some of the projects you describe are clearly welcomed by governments of some very poor countries who see that for right or wrong reasons as necessary. I would like to ask the experts on the panel what you would say, for example, to the Indian government about stopping the Narmada River Development Project and why they should do it. And do you concretely think you've got a chance to do it?
With a number of massive development projects, you win some, you lose some. It seems clear that Narmada is going ahead, at least in some fashion. A number of people are going to be relocated. The cost, both personal, economic, and social, of that relocation is unknown at this point in time. Those kinds of analyses were not well done when that project was approved. These are the kinds of issues we're trying to push, both with the multilateral banks, to do their studies better, to find out what the real costs are for destroying peoples who live in these areas, for destroying the environments themselves, Somebody's going to have to pay this price later on. If you move people out of one area, you're making them dependent, and you're going to have to pay for them to live someplace else. This is not economic development. This needs to be thought about very seriously. So those kinds of projects we would put a stop to, or try to, that we may not be successful all the time. But there are other projects which governments probably wouldn't like, projects with indigenous peoples to get their lands demarcated so that outsiders cannot come into those areas and destroy them. These kinds of projects governments do not like. They're very cheap to do. $20,000 will buy you maybe 1 million acres in the Amazon to set aside for a group that already lives there. These are not expensive projects. These are not World Bank projects because they're too cheap.
Randy Hayes. From the standpoint of the medicine thing, all the different medications that can be taken from the rainforest, and all the problems we have in the world today with diseases that we can't find cures for, don't you think that's a good way to go to the World Health Organizations to support you in that kind of an endeavor, in that direction?
I'm not so much interested in going to the large bureaucracies for a lot more help. They'll do what they're going to do, and they're already working on it in some capacity. What I think we have to do is to build a massive grassroots movement. And we need to get people, particularly in the industrial north, in Japan and Europe and the United States, involved in this issue. Certainly the medical angle is extremely important. 70% of the plants that shown to have anti-cancer curative properties occur only in tropical rainforests. So the cure for cancer may be there and many other diseases as well. Right now, 25% of our medicines in the local pharmacy were developed from plants that only occur in tropical rainforests. This is critical to the future of humanity.
Probably the cure for AIDS will come from the rainforest if we don't destroy it.
There are plants that they're now looking at in the Australian rainforest regions that seem to show promise.
About in a country like Brazil, where it's still legal to sell off half your land, and it keeps getting halved and halved until there's nothing left. Do you propose legislation, or?
Well, I think the problem in Brazil is that most people, although it is legal to clear-cut half of your land in rainforest areas, most people are cutting more than half. So getting it just to half is a start. The other thing is to make sure that the people who already live there and who are not particularly interested in cutting their forest in any case, are given title to their land, clear title. We've begun to do that through pushing the World Bank on its tribal people policy to make sure that the lands of tribal people in project areas are demarcated before any development goes ahead in those areas. These kinds of ways of setting up biological reserves, indigenous reserves, making sure that the most fragile areas are cut off from development so that nobody's allowed to own it and cut even half the land. But it's a long-term kind of thing. There are lots of different battles being fought at lots of different levels, both within the World Bank, within the U.S. government, within Congress, within the Brazilian Congress, within the Indian organizations in Brazil, the Rubber Tappers Association in Brazil. Lots of groups are working on this at different levels.
For legislation, then?
We were the organization that lobbied to put the tribal people policy into effect in the World Bank. I'm presently actually working on an extension of that policy to Africa in the World Bank. We've also testified in Congress to cut off U.S. funds to the World Bank until compliance with that policy is put forward. We've been supporting the National Indian Organization in Brazil for 5 years. We've been closely monitoring the work of the Rubber Tappers Association in Brazil. They're not Indian, so we don't support them directly, but we try to put them in touch with the Indian organizations there. So we have been working in Brazil a great deal. Our organization was actually founded primarily around the issue of Indians in the Amazon, and it has since taken on a more global approach, but that was the original impetus in 1972.
In Canada, they currently have some government-sponsored projects whereby people who own large pieces of land, be they 30 acres or more, can have trees planted on their property that stay for a period of time to help reforestation. Is there any way of getting anything like that started here in the United States? I mean, there's lots and lots of land, and trees are so expensive to purchase to cover your land with, that is there any way to get the government involved in sponsoring something like that?
There are programs in the U.S. where you can get from the Department of Agriculture seedlings to plant. They are much cheaper than going through a nursery. That already exists. They're not free, but they are certainly much cheaper, and people should be encouraged to do that. And they will actually work with you to figure out which trees are most appropriate for your land. But for the most part, the ideal thing is to stop the cutting. Planting is good, but let's stop the cutting.
You need to understand that a tropical rainforest is a non-renewable resource. It's like mining gold out of the earth. You can't regrow another crop. You can never replant with the original genetic diversity, the kinds of medicines that occur out there, and other products that are valuable to the people who live there and to the rest of the planet. It's a non-renewable resource.
Can I add, Randy, to what you just said? We're losing, as somebody said, 11 million hectares a year. We're just doing the next global update, and the results should be ready next year, 89-90. The present prognosis is that the rate of loss has not slowed. It may have actually increased. It may have slowed in 30 or 40 countries because there's practically nothing left to destroy. But it will have dramatically increased in 3 or 4 other countries. Now, Jerry, I've got one suggestion for you. You said it's about money. Hey, man, we're in New York. The bottom line is money.
Yeah.
I got another suggestion. It's about poverty. It's really about poverty. There are 2.5 billion people out there depending on fuel wood to cook, to keep warm at night. There are land reform problems. You've seen the numbers in these tear-out sheets. And the really thing that I'm so excited about, what you all said on the stage was, it's people-oriented. I've heard more shutters click on behalf of the tropical rainforests in the last half hour than in my 27 years of working in the UN system trying to do something with governments. And it's a wonderful thing that you're doing, and thank you. But concentrate on the people end of it, get your direct action groups working with you. That's where it's really going to matter. And think of the poverty issue. When you talk about deforestation, you put a map of deforestation up on the wall, you put a map of absolute poverty up on the wall next door to it, and you've got the same map.
Well, it's getting hotter. Everybody's noticed that, okay? The climate is changing, you know. The weather is changing. I mean, things are not what they used to be. It's hard to say exactly how it affects me right now, but
The point is that nobody knows.
no, we don't really know.
You know how
We have
things like the
suspicions.
weather are so subtle, and what the effect of the rainforest has on any of that stuff, the oxygen, you know, all the things that you hear about, the big scares, it's not known. But as long as it's not known, it's not a good idea to
Yeah, you
to
can't
rip
take a
them up
chance.
and tear
You know, I
them
mean,
down. You
see,
know what I mean?
There's an economic climate for destruction now down there in Brazil, and we have to reverse this. And there's a need to reverse this. And
Yeah.
we have to find alternatives to ways of developing these forests that doesn't destroy them, conserves them. And we have to come up with some of these answers. There's questions, and then there are answers. And this is what we're trying to probe around to find which way to go.
I understand that Japan is one of the largest consumers of wood out of the rainforest. Have you considered going to Japan and trying to work with the kids there to put pressure on their own government?
We've talked about it. I mean, we haven't gone to Japan yet, so we are not a.
If we go to Japan, we'll do something within our sphere of influence. Randy has probably a number of things he could tell you about.
Japan is the world's largest importer of tropical timber. And particularly in Southeast Asia, that's the major cause of the destruction of the rainforests over there. The United States, however, is second. There's a beginning movement in Japan to counteract their voracious appetite for tropical timber, and this fall they will launch the Japan Tropical Timber Campaign. Recently, the Japan Tropical Forest Action Network was formed, and that's a consortium of 15 environmental groups in Japan. I think it would be great for the band to go over and do a benefit there. Then you're getting into the mouth of the financial dragon. I'm sorry, United States, we're number 2 now to Japan in terms of financing global destruction.
The Japanese have just issued a white paper
whereby they outlined some of the problems here. They're really voracious consumers of raw materials. They're also concerned about the sources from which these have come. And consequently now, there's a debate going on in Japan about a conservation strategy for these areas where these resources come from. I think the timing may be right. We are rather excited as to the extent to which non-governmentals turned around the World Bank. I think by focusing attention on some of these other issues and countries, you may also have very good results.
Japan is a good example of how complicated this issue is, because within the last few years, Japan has become the financial center of the world. The people who are investing in mining in Brazil, in Brazilian rainforest areas, are Japanese companies. They're buying shares in Brazilian mining companies, and it's Brazilian companies that are doing the dirty work. But this is the kind of connections that we need to make to figure out where exactly to put pressure on. And Japan is certainly the place at this point in time.
But I wonder if the Japanese people know what's really happening. Maybe the companies that are doing this, and the American companies, but the people, if they knew what was really going on. So really this is about awareness, consciousness, and to develop an understanding by giving and sharing information, real facts, which we're getting here. And I think that everybody has a consciousness, even the people who run these corporations, and if they really knew what was happening, maybe they aren't aware, totally, all of them. Maybe there's some of them that are, maybe there's some bad guys, but I don't think that they're all bad guys, and so pointing the fingers at Japan or the United States is really not what this is all about, really. No. It's about the destruction of the forest, and we have to be real ingenious and creative in coming to grips with this. This is a monstrous problem.
Thank you. We're out of time for the formal part of the press conference, but if anybody wants to stay and continue asking questions, you know, that's fine, but we've run... We have time for just a
quick presentation. There's some maps of Brazil that I think are particularly important that Peter brought. Peter, could you show us real quickly?
Yeah. First I'll show you one, well, I'll start right through it. This here in the white border is Rondônia, which is a region in the Amazon rainforest. It's about the size of Connecticut. Now, from the bottom here, from this corner, running right through this area, up over to here and into this area, is a road called BR 364, which was funded from money from the World Bank. Now, these are photos that were taken by satellite by NASA. This is 1982, and this white area right along this road here show where the forests have been completely slashed and burned. This photo shows 1987, and it shows the difference in how much of that area of deforestation has expanded. Now, they say that in 1990, 50% of the land cover in Rondônia will be gone. And by the year 2000, 100%. And we're not talking being replaced by crops or even with timber. We're talking about hardpan. We're talking about just hard earth. Nutrients completely gone, runoff, the whole bit. Now this third photo, someone asked about greenhouse. This is that same area of Rondônia. At the time that this photograph was taken, there were 2,500 fires burning. This gray area that you see is not cloud cover. Those are smoke plumes. NASA estimated that between June and October of 1987, there were 350,000 fires burning in the Amazon. And that contributed 10% of the CO2 to the atmosphere.
Those are, I might add, those are all trees that otherwise would be processing CO2, turning it back in, and giving us back oxygen. So it's really a double bond there.
We'd like to thank the UN for letting us use this nice room.
Yes, oh, you bet.
And we'd like to thank you all for coming. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Get everybody to stand.
Guys, can you get the 6 of you, or actually the 7 of you, beg your pardon, together for a tight shot?
You guys playing other benefits as well?
No, we will be. Thank you.
I like the point that you told us the earth is us. I think that's a message that went across is a very, very important message.
Yes.
Even the
Well,
people
we're
who
gonna
are
try.
doing it.
Give it a chance.
Sure.
Who's name? Noel Brown. Normal Brown. They kind of the stuff to do. And I'd appreciate it if you're going to want an autograph, wait. Just wait. Yeah, if you can't get a semi-real one from there. But we're really not here to sign autographs, please.
Okay. Dennis, can we get the shot right here if that's possible?
What's happening?
Guys?
Gentlemen, in the back, could you slide over a little bit?
And very, we're on a good company. No, I'm very autographs. Are you happy? Good. John, I gotta talk to you.
They are, oh my God.
Did you bring in amateur photographers? What's this autograph stuff? That's what I mean. Gift in the middle.
Gentlemen, can you squeeze
I'd
really
appreciate
close
it
together,
greatly if
please?
nobody asked for autographs at this point, okay?
Hey, tight shot.
That's not what we're up to at the moment.
Tight as you can.
There will be sales at the reception. Everyone should try smiling. I know it's a grim problem, but
It's a grim problem.
Actually, I tell you what, there's a liquor here.
all right. There we go. Condense this. Looks like a high class lecture. Okay. 2 minutes more, please.
Get on my shoulders.
Stop, come out a little. Gentlemen, right here, please. Right here, gentlemen. One more this way, gentlemen, please.
Stand on a seat. Is anyone here from either WNEW or NPR?
We're taking shots.
WNEW?
Over here.
Yeah, we do.
Sit down. That's nothing.